Welcome to a new daily top Askreddit video. Today's topic: what fan theory do you 100% accept as true? Kermit caused 9/11ths, not really much of a fan theory though since it's unintentionally canon. Edit, realized this should be explained. In the 2002 TV film It's a Very Merry Muppet Christmas Movie, there's a part where an angel shows Kermit an alternate reality where he was never born. For whatever reason, the editors didn't really think about it, and continued to use footage with the Twin Towers still standing for this scene, however they aren't there in his original universe. Therefore, something that Kermit did in his life, did in fact cause 9/11ths in Muppet lore. Realized this should be explained. LMAO. Lol, please elaborate. Edited it. Andy's parents are in the middle of a divorce when the first Toy Story is taking place. I remember asking my parents why is it just Andy and his mom, and they said well, some people live like that. Pixar, rendering is hard, let's just make one parent. We save on voice acting as well. Fans, the father is missing because he's dead. Willy Wonka knew what he was doing. There was no seat for Augustus aboard that boat. He knew Augustus Gloop would fall in there. Oh yay, this is absolutely true. It's why each kid had their own downfall specifically programmed into the tour. That's why he seemed bored by the end too. He was just weeding out the kids that weren't worthy. It's been a while since I watched it, but did they ever get to one to test Charlie? The fizzy lifting drinks thing was Uncle Joe being a bad influence, wasn't it? I don't think that was meant to be Charlie's downfall, otherwise how was there still room for him in the tour past that and whatnot? This also brings up the end game of the movie into question though. Was there a challenge meant for Charlie we didn't see, or was it actually just giving back the gobstopper? Slugworth was going to pay handsomely for it, so I assume if poor Charlie gave it back to Wonka that was him passing his test. The fizzy lifting drink just pissed off Wonka, I guess. That was never supposed to happen, I don't think. The fizzy lifting drinks thing was Uncle Joe being a bad influence, wasn't it? I don't think that was meant to be Charlie's downfall, otherwise how was there room for him past that and whatnot? Charlie and Grandpa Joe don't even drink the fizzy lifting drinks in the book, it was added in the film. Wonka probably knew that Charlie was the right person. Courage the dog is exaggerating normal occurrences into scary things cause he's a dog. And the dog has separation anxiety. Can't forget about that. The things I do for love. He lives in the middle of nowhere because his owners are too old to take him out, so he's not sure what is beyond the walls of his house. And whenever there are scenes outside of his home, it's either warped to be completely foreign fantasy or normal scenery in a city. And it changes depending on the context of the episode. Glider dropped Dorothy's house on the Wicked Witch of the East, not the tornado, and uses her to gain control of Ounce. One of the first things Glider tells Dorothy is that she killed the witch. They praise her so she'll accept it, and when the Witch of the West comes along, who killed her sister? Dorothy. Glider then puts the ruby slippers on Dorothy's feet but does not tell her that she can use them to go home. Instead, she sends Dorothy to Ounce in possession of objects that a witch would murder her for. Dorothy, being forced into a situation where her only salvation is Ounce and her worst enemy is the Queen, inadvertently exposes the Wizard of Ounce as a fraud and murders the Witch of the West. Now, who's left to rule Ounce? Glider fucky Witch of the North. She used Dorothy as an expendable pawn to gain control of Ounce without having to leave her bubble. And when Dorothy is done upheaving the two biggest powers in Ounce, Glider sends her home and makes her think it was all a dream. Hell, the Wicked Witch isn't even that evil. She just wants her sister's shoes to remember her by. No one mourns the wicked. She came down in a bubble, Doug. They were sisters. Scoob-Doo is a show about draft dodgers during the Vietnam War. I also remember a theory that it takes place during a severe economic downturn. How else do you explain all the abandoned houses and barns and airfields and such, along with a glut of desperate criminals in what seems to be a fairly small town? I was under the impression they traveled the country solving mysteries, not that every episode took place in the same general area. And dudes getting arrested for playing dress up on their own property. Barney from How I Met Your Mother isn't actually as much of a womanizer as Ted says he is. Ted's an unreliable narrator and could have presented this image of Barney to his kids either because he was jealous of Barney's relationship with Robin, or because he wants Barney to look unsuitable for her. That way, Ted's kids see Ted and Robin as soulmates. I've heard the theory that Ted put all his one-night stand stories on Barney so he doesn't look bad / manipulative in front of his kids, meaning like 50% of the stories of Barney manipulating women are Ted lying to women to get laid. Interesting. I just find it hard to believe Ted was charming enough to get laid that much, haha. The Last Airbender is not, as many have suspected, meant to be a big screen version of the TV show of the same name. It is, in fact, a subtle but clear adaptation of the show's episode The Ember Island Players, in which a poorly informed in-universe theater troupe recap the events of the series in an inaccurate and comedic style. I hadn't heard this one, but I'll take it. Movie was still bad enough that people watching it on airplays walked out of it. Ditto are failed Mew clones. Professor Oak, what is this hideous, deformed blob? Assistant, I'm sorry, sir, the cloning went wrong. Ditto, kill all me. Professor looks over at Pokemo Nursery. Professor Oak, no. I have a better idea. Professor Oak, no. I have a better idea. No, Shadma, please. The real world in the Matrix movies is just another layer of the Matrix, designed specifically to appeal to people unwilling to conform to the normal matrix. Humans in this outer matrix have confirmation of their belief that something was wrong, and get to indulge in the fantasy of being a heroic freedom fighter against the faceless evil machines, thus choosing to accept this false reality. The anomaly of the one is that he's capable of rejecting both realities, which is the reason why he had powers in the real world. Yeah, did Revolutions ever address this? I thought the cliffhanger ending of Reloaded was meant to reveal that the real world was just another matrix. It was supposed to. The big reveal should have been that the Matrix exists is to keep human minds enslaved because the machines were actually using them like a big supercomputer cluster. It was never about electric energy storage. Studio XX killed the idea because they thought fans were too dumb to understand it. Mr. Bean is an alien. That would explain his weird behavior and why he falls out of the sky at the beginning of every episode. This is actually confirmed in the animated series where we see numerous Mr. Beans in a UFO. Edit, and I had to make this comment on my throwaway. Not an angel instead. He falls from the sky to the sound of a choir. I always thought this meant that he died, but he was so stupid that they kicked him out of heaven back on Earth. Inception. Leonardo's wedding ring is his totem. Not the spinning top. If you watch, he only wears it in dreams, never takes it off or puts it on, and no one ever touches it. The top was Mal's and doesn't work for him, which is why he always picked it up before a full spin. My interpretation is that his kids are his totem. When he thinks of them in his dream state, he never sees their faces. At the end, he is in reality as he sees his kids' faces. The first one is excellent, but I like this more. Also, when he introduces the concept of the totem, he explains how it has to be something only you know intimately, so that if someone crafted a fake dream, only you would be able to tell it apart from the real one. So why would he then explain what his totem is and exactly how it works? The wedding ring would work because he would be able to know exactly how much it weighs, how smooth the metal is, how tight the fit is. This was a Reddit post a while ago actually, but the theory was, in Empire Strikes Back, when Luke tells R2 to stay in the ship at various times, he doesn't stay put, because the last person to tell him that was Arky and he never came back. My favorite R2 theory is that in A New Hope, when he and Obi-Wan meet again, that unlike C-3PO, R2's memory was never erased but they pretend not to know each other. This is obviously because the finer details of the prequel trilogy weren't ironed out when A New Hope was originally released. Now the widely accepted fan theory is that Obi-Wan says nothing because he doesn't want Luke to know who he is and what his relationship was to Arky, so as to keep him from being corrupted by the influence of the dark side. Whereas R2 doesn't give anything away because he ain't no fucky snitch. Edit, a word. Like I've said a million times, R2 is a real one. Bikini Bottom is a nuclear bomb testing site, which is why the fish have legs. Edit, yes, it's Bikini Atoll. Never mind the mushroom clouds every time something falls off screen / in the distance. Edit to add, https://pl41kygd1v8. That's not a fan theory. Bikini Atoll is a real place in the Marshall Islands where the US used to test radioactive weapons. It is a fan theory. People on the show have recognized it and debunked it on interviews, even though the show is indeed based on the Bikini Atoll. Yes, but it could also just be a fictional underwater town with talking fish because it's a fucking kids show. This is a little out there, but hear me out. The year 2015 we see in Back to the Future 2 is what would have happened if not for Kirobile. Which leads to the argument that something in the movies, specifically 2 and 3, caused Kirobile to happen. As you know, the year the characters are from is 1985, with Kirobile happening in 1986. My take is, learning of the Libyans' attempt to procure plutonium, the Soviets send a spy to Hill Valley to learn more in order to prevent destabilizing relations during the Cold War. The spy arrives late, and in the timeline established by just the first movie, leaves. This is the timeline we see in the second movie, which is eventually erased. However, Doc Brown meddles with time again, and causes the events of the second and thus third movie. The spy witnesses the end of the third movie with the flying train, and assumes it's a new sort of aircraft. He investigates the scene after the main characters depart and finds wreckage of the DeLorean. Among the wreckage is some parts of the destroyed fusion reactor. Relaying findings to the Soviets, they get the impression that the US is significantly ahead of them in nuclear development. To combat this, they aggressively greenlight a bunch of nuclear projects, including a risky test that results in the Kirobile meltdown. The resulting event scares people the world over and hinders nuclear research and progression. With lack of funding and roadblocks to more nuclear proliferation, fusion technology is never developed. Thus hampered, the timeline turns into ours. In the 2015 timeline shown in BTTF2, the nuclear research breakthroughs make the rest of the technology possible, including flying cars and hoverboards. With some developments happening in the late 80s, the economy is lifted and the downturn of the early 80s does not happen. This has an effect of extending the garish fashion of the 80s forward, hence why the clothes look different as well. Ooh, this one is cool, I like it. So we live in the bad ending. Edit. Okay guys, I get it, some really bad events have taken place ever since 1985. But holy fuck, chill, you are acting as if the Nazis won in some cases.